So we have Carlos Orr, wide receiver, got some fantastic length, 6'4", 185 pounds. Austin Peay, who I still try not to think about because of the whole Ken Norman, Dick Vitale situation. Buffalo, East Carolina, Toledo. Of course, we know Toledo's got a heck of a program. Miami of Ohio and Western Michigan. So, Ked, here's a long, thin receiver. Give us your thoughts on Mr. Orr.
One of my favorite positions on the field is wide receiver. A few years ago, this was probably the worst room on the University of Illinois campus. Now it's becoming one of the better rooms on campus. This kid is 6'4". Last year he, had 700 over 700 yards receiving. His junior year, he had over 1,000 yards receiving. He had some serious interest from Northwestern and Virginia Tech and Cincinnati. He's a three-star kid, but I like the fact that he's from down south from Tennessee. And he's 6'4". Illinois is going out and they're getting some bigger receivers, which I like, guys that could go up and who could go get the ball. I think, when you put a guy like him, in the red zone, he'll be able to go up to make plays. And, I had a chance to talk to him, before he committed. And one of the first things that he talked about was Coach, George McDonald. I mean, like, they sold him on this whole family atmosphere thing, and they took a chance on him when other schools didn't do it. So Coach George McDonald did a really good job with him and this recruitment.
I don't usually do this early, but the player comp here is Ashton Hollins, who was also from Mississippi, who is a long 6'4", 6'5" receiver, but was raw and really honestly had no business being on the field early on in his career because he didn't understand the nuances of playing the wide receiver position. Now, Ashton was transitioning from high school quarterback to wide receiver. That's not the case here with Carlos Orr. He's played wide receiver his entire career, but he's also had injury issues that I don't think are going to be an issue by the time he gets to Illinois. However, I do think that he still has raw skills that have not been coached. And I do believe in the player development of George McDonald. I also think it's a great thing for a guy like Carlos Orr that he does not need to be on the field early on for two reasons. One, I do agree with Ked. I think I think the wide receiver depth has gotten better over time under George McDonald. And two, your position coach is George McDonald, and we all know how George feels about playing freshmen. So you can forget about that knowledge 100% and not have to worry about getting on the field your first or maybe even first half of your second year, because George sees the 4-year, 5-year process with you, and especially sees it with somebody like Carlos Orr. I do think that they think by the time that he's an upperclassman, he could have a Casey Washington type career at Illinois. And if you remember how Casey Washington developed, you need to remember that Casey Washington at best is 6'2.5". This kid will show up on campus at a legit 6'4", which is again why I think a lot of people are excited about the development of, say, an Ashton Hollins once he becomes an upperclassman, especially after what he did last year as a younger player. I think that they see the same path for Carlos Orr.
Yeah, I keep thinking when I think of the 6'4", ish receiver, I go into the David Williams mode of a guy who knows how to use his length. And I think Carlos Orr, because of a coach like George McDonald, he may not play his freshman year, but by the time he gets on the field, he'll be really good and well developed. So I think there's a lot of excitement for Carlos Orr.